If you have sleep apnea and struggle with CPAP, consider that CPAPs were invented in 1980. Do you even remember 1980? Everyone's house had one telephone. There were like 4 TV channels. Now, for people who struggle with CPAP, there's Inspire. Inspire treats sleep apnea inside your body at the click of a remote. No mask, no hose, just sleep. To learn more, visit inspiresleep.com. Inspire is not for everyone. Talk to your doctor to see if it's right for you and review important safety information at inspiresleep.com.
And good evening. We're doing it live right here in the 5 o'clock hour in Los Angeles. Mottek on Money, 5 nights a week for you live on the air right here in 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com. And your on-demand Mottek on Money podcast at kbc.com, Apple, iTunes, all your favorite podcast platforms. Stocks ending the week lower, with the Dow falling for a 4th day in a row, its longest losing streak since June. The S&P 500 and NASDAQ locking a 3rd straight week of declines as rising bond yields impacting mortgage rates, which have hit 23-year highs this week. Also rocking stocks in the wake of the Fed's meeting we got on Wednesday. Stocks moving lower after 2 days of selling, sparked by the Fed projecting its policy interest rate would remain above 5% well into next year. Looks like the stock market has just taken its biggest hit since the March banking crisis. Yep, banking crisis, I said. You can call it whatever you want, but we did see several bank failures earlier this year. The Dow coming in for a closing loss of 107 points today. The S&P 500 down 10, and the NASDAQ dropped 12 points. Watching the yield in the 10-year note hit 4.44% today. That's the one that impacts the fixed-rate mortgage rates, which did hit 23-year highs this week. We'll take a closer look at those rates coming up later this hour. We heard from the Boston Federal Reserve President today, Susan Collins, said rates are likely to stay higher and for longer than previously projected, while Governor Michelle Bowman of the Fed said it's possible the Fed could raise rates further to tamp down inflation. The latest Fed dot plot released following the close of the central bank's 2-day policy meeting on Wednesday showed Fed officials expect to raise rates once more in 2023. On the economic readings we got today, some weakness seen in the services sector while manufacturing activity recovered slightly but remained in contraction. That's big news here since Los Angeles is the largest manufacturing region in the United States. Taking a look at what else is happening, of course, oil prices have been soaring recently, and you're noticing a big difference at Southern California gas pumps, eye-popping prices everywhere you look. It does pay to pay attention to those signs, especially nowadays with prices moving up so dramatically. Big difference in prices between station to station, so we'll take a closer look at that coming up. Big discussions on residential and commercial real estate in the Los Angeles area this week. The Real Deals LA Real Estate Forum wrapping up at the London Hotel in West Hollywood. Some of the biggest names in commercial real estate, including Lou Horn, president of CBRE Advisory Services for CBRE's Greater Los Angeles. And on the residential side, Jason Oppenheim, celebrity realtor and star of the Netflix series Selling Sunset, all attended. I'll discuss what happened at that big discussion tonight and the big takeaways from the conference. Jerry Sullivan will be joining me live, national managing editor of The Real Deal, former editor of the LA and Orange County Business Journals. On the crime front, smash and grab thieves now hitting restaurants in the Los Angeles area. I'll discuss the latest with Angela Marsden, owner of Pineapple Hills Saloon and Grill in Sherman Oaks, small business hero here in Southern California, and host of SOS Los Angeles, which airs Saturdays at 1 p.m. right here on 790 KBC. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, inflation, oil, the whole works. Joining us live now, Gabriel Wisdom, Managing Director at American Money Management and author of Wisdom on Value Investing. Gabriel, thank you very much for joining us live here to wrap up a big week, unfortunately a losing week here. In fact, the worst week we've seen in months. Give us your assessment of things here at the moment.
Well, Frank, you know, the old adage is that you sell on Rosh Hashanah and you buy Yom Kippur. And this is based on the concept that those who follow the Jewish faith want to be free from material possessions during that sacred 10-day period between the two major holidays. And this weekend, we go into the final part of it, Yom Kippur, and there's a seasonal pattern there that dates back a very, very long time. Now, certainly you want to buy when everybody's complaining. You want to sell when they're celebrating, or you sell when you buy when they're atoning, and then you hang on. But the fact is that there's a seasonal tendency August through September for weakness in the markets, and we're exiting that seasonal weakness. There's already been a parade of Federal Open Market Committee speakers. You referenced two of them. There's more to come over the next few weeks, and we're likely to keep hearing about how higher interest rates will be needed for longer due to higher gross domestic product. And we need to be mindful that the Federal Reserve is basically speculating on the future of economic growth. Some of the prior forecasts certainly have been 100% wrong. For example, calling inflation transitory a couple of years ago, that was so wrong. Better to be approximately right than 100% wrong. One thing for sure, Frank, over the past 90 years, interest rates at 4.5% or so, take the 10-year Treasury yield, that's been a sweet spot for economic growth and stock prices. Stocks have been generally higher when interest rates are in that 4.5% range because it indicates strong economic growth.
On there live with Gabriel Wisdom. We want to wish you a happy and healthy New Year, 5784, to all those celebrating the holiday. Sell Rosh Hashanah, buy Yom Kippur. Yeah, that's been an adage that's been around for a long time, and here we are heading into the fall season now. It's officially autumn here now, and so certainly seasonal factors play into things, right? You're also a market historian. What do you see ahead? Where does this thing go from here?
Well, Frank, I think that we're going to go higher, and the reason for it is that the most important driver of stock prices is on the rise, and it reflects the economy. We've had a very resilient stock market in the face of rising interest rates, the highest in 20 years. Certainly, you have to adjust and adapt and pivot as needed in business and in the financial markets. But the overall trend for earnings is up. I saw here that MasterCard, through a Spending Pulse survey, is forecasting a very strong holiday season, and we're only 5 weeks away from the holiday buying season, which begins November 1 through December 24th. U.S. retail sales, excluding automotive, are expected to rise almost 4% from last year, and the retail numbers look pretty good.
All right, what about the retailers impacted by crime increasingly? Shrinkage is the euphemism used to describe shoplifting and what's happening there with their inventories. What about Macy's and the other big stores that have been in the spotlight lately?
Well, they're going to have to do what we've seen retailers do in much of the second and third world, the emerging world, and they'll have to hire their own security, I'm afraid, because the police, unfortunately, have been too timid, and the political risks are just too great. And to let this continue it's just wrong. We're hoping for a return to a more normal environment because we're returning to a more normal inflation environment. That's already starting to happen. And there's pretty decent in-store sales, even though e-commerce sales are expected to jump almost 7% compared to last year. So clearly something has to be done with the smash and grab crime wave.
Certainly impacting restaurants, too. We'll be talking about that tonight with restaurant owner Angela Marsden later this hour. Now, at Southern California gas pumps, you're one of us here, Gabriel, so you've noticed it, too. Inflation on full display at Southern California gas pumps. A meteoric rise recently as the price of oil hovers above $90 a barrel in New York at this point. That's certainly fueled inflation in the past couple of months here now. What's your outlook on where gas and oil prices go from here?
Well, we saw this week, Frank, that Russia it has decided to ban exports of diesel fuel, and they're a major exporter of diesel fuel. And they say that the export ban, which has no end date, is intended to replenish their own supply and reduce their own prices in Russia domestically. And as I mentioned, they're one of the largest producers of diesel, and we depend on diesel in the world. We're not just going to go green tomorrow. It'd be nice, never land, but it's just It's not happening. It's not going to happen. It is worth noting, I think, that the United States and the European Union have already banned imports of Russian refined fuel because of the Moscow's war against the Ukraine. But this is costing the consumer. Also, the U.S. is entering the winter season, and winter-grade gasolines are generally less expensive. So hopefully there'll be some relief in the next few months.
All right, we've seen some interesting IPOs lately. Suddenly, we're getting these initial public stock offerings. Anything that's caught your attention in this recent flurry of IPOs?
Well, I'm watching ARM, which is a semiconductor chip maker, basically, and Instacart. Both have been soft. They came out strong, had a very strong initial debut, which everyone on Wall Street's excited about because it's a very lucrative area for Wall Street investment banks and underwriters. But then they soften in the aftermarket. And oftentimes when new companies go public, there isn't a sufficient amount of followage from the industry analysts. That usually takes a year or two. And we see this with spin-offs as well. When companies spin off a division and it's a new entity that trades separately, the stock will sink. Well, that can create opportunities. I don't think we're going to see a lot of new IPOs until next year, honestly.
All right, we got the hot labor summer, now hot labor autumn continuing with the strikes involving the writers and the actors continuing. There's some hope that there could be a deal with the writers at some point, possibly very soon. What about the media stocks at this point?
Well, you know, there's several pending lawsuits against OpenAI, the developer of ChatGPT, which Microsoft has licensed, including one that was filed Tuesday of this week in federal district court in New York by the Authors Guild on behalf of dozens of best-selling authors, including George R.R. Martin. And they're all saying that OpenAI is feeding their books into ChatGPT's language model algorithm without their consent. In other words, OpenAI is pilfering their creative work to improve ChatGPT's ability to then spit it out. And I don't know how this is going to be resolved, but I think this may be at the heart of what we're seeing in Hollywood with the strike. The media companies are soft, and I think that they're attractive here, especially if they get softer, because this will get resolved.
All right, and then, of course, the other big story this week, the UAW strike, not to pile on the labor front, but that's a huge story impacting the big three Detroit automakers and also Canadian auto workers now, too. So what do you see happening there?
You know, Frank, Rick Newman, who I know you like, he's a senior editor at Yahoo Finance, wrote today.
Afford Anything talks about how to avoid common pitfalls, how to refine your mental models, and how to think about how to think.
In the world of money and investing, it can be easy to be dogmatic about your beliefs. You're part of the FIRE movement, Financial Independence Retire Early, or you hate it, you hate it, you hate it. And either you embrace credit cards as a route to getting airline reward, or you follow the Dave Ramsey camp and believe that you shouldn't touch them because if you play with snakes, you might get bit. Afford Anything, wherever you listen.
That what striking workers get wrong about automaker profits is significant. And what they get wrong might be that the Detroit three, the big three, they think they can afford to pay workers more and shareholders less, but nobody's asking their competitors to do that. And some of those competitors are already enjoying the advantages, like Tesla. The Detroit automakers, they aren't the same titans that they used to be, and they're not the titans possibly that the UAW seems to think they are, according to Rick Newman, and I think he makes a good point. In the Great Recession of 2007-2008, GM and Stellantis forerunner Chrysler declared bankruptcy, and equity was wiped out, and Ford almost did. So I think it's a different kind of environment. They're being emboldened by the president and various political figures. So I just hope they can come up with a deal.
Absolutely. That's going to be something in the spotlight in the week ahead, with the president reportedly set to hit one of the picket lines there at one of the strike locations. So we'll be watching that very, very closely. And as I mentioned at the beginning, it was a rough week for the market. In fact, the worst week of losses since the March banking crisis. And speaking of that, I'll be talking about real estate here shortly with one of the top people in that world, Jerry Sullivan from The Real Deal. It's at a big conference here in West Hollywood. What about commercial real estate, Gabriel, and the banks and those big issues that are still impacting things out there?
Well, the banks are clearly tied to the real estate markets because they make long-term mortgage loans against commercial and residential real estate. The good news is that a majority of homeowners, especially baby boomers and older people, locked in very low rates. But the bad news is they don't want to move because they've locked in a very low rate. And, here it is 3.5 years since COVID, and the return to office situation isn't going so well. I mentioned once before that even Zoom technologies, which helps people work from home, Zoom is demanding that their employees return to the office, but they're having very little success there. A bigger housing crisis, I think, may be threatening China's economy, and that may give the Federal Reserve here and other central banks reason to reduce interest rates if it's bad enough. We remember the Evergrande default, which was China's largest privately run property developer, or publicly run property developer. Now their largest privately run developer, Country Gardens, is on the brink of default. Economists are predicting that the housing industry's problems could deal a very big hit to consumer confidence in China. Real estate-related industries there contribute about a quarter of China's gross domestic product. So we're watching this.
On the Live with Gabriel Wisdom and Zoom trying to get their employees back to work. Maybe all of their employees are on mute. Maybe they, or maybe it's vice versa. They're not able to hear those instructions. At this point, Gabriel Wisdom, where are you putting money now and/or taking it off the table?
Well, Frank, I continue to like legacy energy. Oil prices are up 30% since the Saudis and Russia started reducing output. At the same time, a growing number of Wall Street analysts are predicting $100 a barrel oil. Goldman Sachs became the latest firm to lift their target over the next 12 months to $100. And then J.P. Morgan has an analyst report they call the super cycle. And this month's super cycle is energy-related companies, energy-related equities. Their favorites are Shell, Saudi Aramco, ExxonMobil, Baker Hughes. I think you could own them all in an exchange-traded fund here as a nice hedge against rising prices. It doesn't appear that it's going to get any easier for the traditional energy companies to produce and sell what continues to be needed. And then additionally, we're going into the presidential election cycle hotspot for next year. Generally, markets rise. I would buy the broad market here and just be patient.
Gabriel Wisdom, Managing Director of American Money Management, based here in Southern California, and author of Wisdom on Value Investing. Gabriel, it's always great to have you with us. Thank you very much for wrapping up this important week.
Thank you, Frank.
Folks, let's be honest. Sometimes we find ourselves or a loved one dealing with a massive injury caused by a terrible accident by no fault of our own. Sometimes it's simply being the wrong place at the wrong time. It happens all the time. Now, listen, we're good at preparing for earthquakes and fires, but let's not forget to prepare in case we're involved in a major accident. Critical to know who to call first. Clark Fielding became an attorney to help you in a crisis. Fielding Law is focused on justice and resources for you because they understand how the system works and what to do in the most horrific situations. I always say to put the Fielding Law team in your phone under the word accident, so all you have to do is hit the dial button. Believe me, you'll feel better having set this up in advance for your family and for yourself. 833-88-SHARK is the number. That's 833-88-SHARK. With the population exploding and increased vehicles on the freeways, be proactive, prepare for the worst, and expect the best. But if and when you need help, call Clark Fielding and his team of sharks at 833-88-SHARK, 833-88-SHARK, or go to ClarkTheSharkLaw.com. Again, that's ClarkTheSharkLaw.com. Mottek on Money continues here in 790 KABC. Good evening. Heading into the weekend here, the Dow pulling back 106 points at 33,964. The S&P 500 down 10 at 4,320, and the NASDAQ down 12 at 13,212. Losing week for the market. In fact, the worst week we've seen since that banking crisis we saw earlier this year. We're still up for the year, though. The Dow up 2%, about 2% for the year. The S&P 500 still up about 12% for the year, and the NASDAQ up 26% since the start of the year. Taking a look at the cryptos here, we see a Bitcoin up about 80 at 26,615. Ethereum up 3 at 1,594. Doge at 6 cents. Price of gas and oil in focus this week as the price of oil is stubbornly above $90 a barrel, and the gas prices along for the ride. We're seeing in New York, crude oil futures of 40 cents today to 90.03 a barrel. Oil down in London, down 3 cents at 93.27. Looks like the mortgage rates have hit a 23-year high this week. The 30-year fixed, according to Freddie Mac, 7.19%. The average 15-year fixed at 6.54%. Oh, yeah, gas prices actually down a couple cents today in the last 24 hours, but a meteoric rise in the last month of about 70 cents a gallon over the past month or so. 6.04 now, the average price for regular gas in Los Angeles. 6.37, the average price for premium. And we're looking at 6.46 now, the average price for diesel. Folks, I'm not exaggerating when I say this. QC Kinetics can change your life. You can live again without that chronic joint pain and without drugs or surgery. It's Frank Mottek here. QC Kinetics is advanced regenerative medicine. They take your body's own concentrated healing properties and put them right into your joint to restore and repair that damaged tissue that's causing all of that horrible pain. The patient satisfaction reports are absolutely astonishing. Finally, a real alternative to the old ways of dealing with pain. And unlike surgery, there is no downtime with QC treatments. Now, if you have constant pain in your knees, hips, shoulders, or back, you need to call and get a free consultation from the medical professionals at QC Kinetics today. Imagine this autumn and the holidays coming up, moving around pain-free, doing the things you love again, walking, hiking, playing with your grandkids, going shopping, you name it. Call QC Kinetics and see how the latest advances in precision regenerative medicine can attack your pain and bring you lasting relief. Call QC Kinetics with locations in Glendale, the city of Orange, Mission Viejo, and now also in Costa Mesa. Call 213-997-PAIN. 213-997-PAIN. Again, that's 213-997-PAIN. Mottek on Money continues here in 790 KBC. An impressive and timely discussion on real estate happening in West Hollywood this week. Big discussions on residential and commercial real estate in the Los Angeles area. The Real Deals LA Real Estate Forum just wrapped up at the London Hotel in West Hollywood. Some of the biggest names in commercial real estate, including Lou Horn, president of CBRE Advisory Services for CBRE's Greater Los Angeles area, and Jason Oppenheim, celebrity realtor and star of the Netflix series Selling Sunset, among the participants. And joining us live now, Jerry Sullivan, national managing editor of The Real Deal, former editor of the LA and Orange County Business Journal. Jerry, thank you very much for taking the call, and congratulations on putting together an impressive conference there of speakers and attendees. Tell us about some of the big takeaways there in residential as well as in commercial real estate.
Yeah, and it's great to be with you, Frank, and thanks for checking in. I think one of the big takeaways came from Lou Horn of CBRE, and, he was talking about the recent passage of the ULA property transfer tax. It's been called the mansion tax. It's misleading. It also, it suggests it's only residential. It also applies to commercial. The fact that sort of snuck up on the industry and didn't get much opposition before it passed at ballot. There's numerous efforts to try and overturn it, repeal it, and we'll see how that turns out. But, I think Lou's point was you can't afford another one like that, and the industry had better engage both with the public and with elected officials to try and explain why. I think we're seeing it play out, how that tax has adversely affected a key part of LA's real estate business and is not bringing in the return that was promised. So, that was a key takeaway. And I think Lou also mentioned that the 1031 exchange program that could be repealed in the state of California. There was an attempt recently, and CBRE actually invested in hiring a lobbyist and played a key role in turning that back. But apparently Lou told the crowd that that's in the air again. And so stand by, we'll see. But I think the takeaway was
Stacking Benjamins with Joe and his good friend OG not only has great financial insight, it's laid back with humor too.
The Len Penzo sandwich survey.
I wanted to know, was it really cheaper to brown bag it every day, or was it cheaper to go through the school lunch?
And the most expensive sandwich of all.
46% increase. This is the first time a sandwich has ever touched $5. Before anybody gags on that, though, it's a great sandwich.
Find out more by searching the Stacking Benjamins podcast, wherever you listen.
better get engaged because there's stuff out there that's going on that could hurt the industry. And if you're not aware or you're not taking the proper steps to tell your side of the story, you could get hurt.
And that measure, ULA, by the way, was passed into law by voters in Los Angeles last November. It established a 4% tax on all real property sales priced or valued at $5 million to no greater than $10 million, and a 5.5% tax on real property sales priced or valued at $10 million or greater. And it's had a tremendous impact on commercial real estate, right? It was sold as a mansion tax to try to help the homeless, but it's not turning out the way. It's pretty much decimated the commercial real estate business here, right?
Certainly it's hurt, and I think one area where decimated may apply is in the development of apartments, which is sorely needed. We're facing I think everybody agrees there's a housing crunch. To what degree you could argue, but the so-called mansion tax, or ULA, has really brought development of apartments in the pipeline for units expected to come online in the LA market almost to a halt. And that's the sort of unintended consequence that got through in this whole thing. And I think it's, there has to be some follow-up sorting out. It's under legal challenge. We'll see where that goes. There's also, I think, is going to be put on the ballot to try and repeal it. So, we'll see how all that goes. But,
right.
There's some definite real-life ramifications.
Right, and one thing that may come as a surprise, apparently Los Angeles County now considering a similar ULA-style tax, which would make the situation even worse from what we understand.
Yes, and it's out there, and I think that's testament to the fact that I don't know that people are sorting out how the world works. In other words, there's a reason why the ULA tax in the city has not raised as much money as everyone thought, and it's because it stopped deals from being done. It brought the market to a severe slowdown. Now, the answer to that is not passing a county tax, I don't think, right, because that certainly will not bring more deals. So I think there's a disconnect between the public sector and private sector on this, and there's really got to be a discussion, and I think it's up to the private sector at this point to explain that to the public officials who are pushing this stuff.
Commercial real estate, very much a hot topic right now, and Lou Horn certainly a giant in that world, and we hope to speak to Lou Horn on this program as well to follow up on that conference. And certainly on the residential side, you had some big celebrity realtors there. Jason Oppenheim, for example, among others. We see mortgage rates kissing, a 23-year high this week, and certainly at some of these stratospheric price levels, mortgage not a factor. But what about the residential side of business?
Well, and, the three, there was Jason Oppenheim, Brandy Williams, and Jade Mills all on this panel, and three very well-versed, well-known, and high-volume, high-end real estate brokers in L.A. And I think they all were in consensus that the interest rates, of course, and the ULA tax, which they all operate in the very high end, so it's hard there, have really pinched the market. And I think the general consensus was don't expect too much to get better before 2024. And this is kind of a year to get through. But they all had an underlying, I think, confidence that, the LA market will bear out over time. But you got to get there. And I think there's some structural changes. I think Jason brought up the fact that, some of the splits that the big publicly traded brokerage outfits agree to with their individual brokers. Some have tried to take less, give the locals more. as a way to kind of beef up their operations. And Jason was actually saying that, maybe it ought to go back to 70-30 from 80-20 kind of became a way that people were trying to maybe grow their base a little bit. And so, I think the overall feeling I got was, let's be reasonable. It's a tough time. Let's sort of give and take. And maybe, maybe the larger end has to go back to 70-30 split, just to make things a little more sensible in that sector.
And certainly sales have taken a hit lately, and the prices seem to be holding up pretty well here. I think somebody made the point at the conference, and I thought this was interesting. They said that today's luxury properties are tomorrow's affordable housing. That's what it's looking like here in the Los Angeles area, the way prices have been performing.
Yeah, we'll see. I think it's kind of an odd market in that interest rates are high. The ULA tax is inhibiting the market, but there's very little being put on the market, and so that tends the restricted supply tends to keep the price up, and so it's not an easy market to read. It's not that the prices, I think, are dropping dramatically, but there's just a dearth of available deals. And so, that's the deals are the oil that, the machine runs on. And so that's where I think the concern is right now.
Well, Jerry, thank you very much. We'll be following you on The Real Deal. And again, congratulations to you and your team for that impressive gathering there. It was terrific. The wonderful real estate forum that just wrapped up at the London Hotel in West Hollywood. Jerry Sullivan, National Managing Editor of The Real Deal, former editor of the Los Angeles Business Journal and also the Orange County Business Journal. Jerry, thanks so very much for joining us live here tonight on Mottek on Money on 790 KBC.
You're welcome, Frank, and thanks for joining us at the event and for giving us this amplification. It's appreciated, and wish you the best as always.
Thank you very much, Jerry. Hope to see you soon and talk to you soon about all these important stories which we follow here on Mottek on Money, 790 KBC. Friends, let's be honest. Sometimes we find ourselves or a loved one dealing with a massive injury caused by a terrible accident by no fault of our own. Sometimes it's simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Now, we're good at preparing for earthquakes and fires, but let's not forget to prepare in case we're involved in an unforeseen major accident. It's critical to know who to call first. Clark Fielding became a lawyer to help you in a crisis. Fielding Law is focused on justice and resources for you because they understand how the system works and what to do in the most horrific situations. I always say to put the Fielding Law team in your phone under the word accident, so all you have to do is press dial. Believe me, you'll feel better having set this up for yourself and your family in advance. The number is 833-88-SHARK. Put it in there right now, 833-88-SHARK. With the population exploding and increased vehicles on the freeways, be proactive and prepare for the worst. Expect the best. But if and when you need help, call Clark and his team of sharks at 833-88-SHARK, 833-88-SHARK, or go to clarkthesharklaw.com. Again, that's clarkthesharklaw.com. Mottek on Money continues here in 790 KBC. Crime continues to run rampant, impacting retailers and now restaurants in a bigger and worse way. Smash and grab thieves now hitting restaurants in the Los Angeles area. Gangs of thieves now targeting restaurants across the LA area, putting employees and sometimes customers at risk. Police reports show restaurant burglaries up significantly from previous years. For example, Home State Kitchen in Sherman Oaks has been hit by thieves 7 times since last December. According to NBC4, they shattered the glass doors and stole the safe in that incident. And down the street on just one night last April, 5 restaurants say they were hit, including Marmalade Cafe on Ventura Boulevard, where thieves broke in and first disabled the security cameras. Joining us live now, Angela Marsden, owner of Pineapple Hill Saloon and Grill in Sherman Oaks and host of SOS Los Angeles, a show which airs Saturdays here at 1 p.m. on 790 KBC. And Angela Marsden, of course, also a small business hero and really a leading voice for a small business here in Southern California. Angela, thank you very much for taking the call. Take it from the top here and describe for us what's happening right there in your area.
Yeah, Frank, thank you so much for having me on. Hi, everybody out in L.A. I hope you're all doing well. But you know what? The issue is we have certain city council members that will not vote in the direction to help the businesses. And they've been told very clearly what the residents and the businesses need, which is voting against a better contract for the police, voting against recruitment. NIFIA knows that this is needed, and she actively voted no. And she also knew that the businesses of Sherman Oaks, the ones that are being targeted and being attacked, asked her before she voted to vote in supporting for more police officers. Literally, my friend, Christy from Casa Vega, went with us to city council to support the contract for the police officers. And that afternoon, her son was in the mall and there was a smash and grab in Macy's. She has had to hire armed security. She's spending $100,000 a year in security. She feels completely unsafe. I don't have that kind of money. When my cook is attacked by a homeless person, I'm told to get bear spray and a bat. And that literally is where we are at. So it is not a surprise to me that JAR got robbed. It's not a surprise to me that this is going to continue to happen. And then what happens? The state of California goes and passes the law that, an employer is not supposed to stop somebody who is shoplifting. Look, I've said this before. We have liability insurance companies we have to answer to. We care about our employees. We're not going to try to put them in harm's way. But when you pass a law like that, you simply are telling thieves and robbers it is carte blanche. LA is carte blanche. Whatever you want, go and do it because there's not going to be any consequences. I know that Karen Bass has put together a team and she's trying very hard to track down the smash and grabs at the malls. And I know that she got the DA to say that they would basically charge felony robbery if there is any sense of fear in the victims, and she's doing that so people will come forward and testify. But what about the small businesses and the restaurants? What about the level of fear that we're fearing from being robbed, from being attacked by homeless people? Why can't you upgrade the assaults from literally, kid you not, I had an assault happen in my parking lot. The gentleman, it was a vagrant that did it. And the guy went to jail. He was arrested that night. They went down the street and caught him as he's running with his shirt off. They arrest him. He gets out the next day, and this is because of the DA, and this is because of the laws that we have that's soft on crime. He gets out the next day. My client is still trying to get a police report so that he can testify against this person that has done this. Meanwhile, within 5 days of him doing that, he's been released, and he's went and reassaulted in North Hollywood, been arrested, and been released again, and is somewhere roaming the city. I'm sure he's been arrested again since then. This is soft on crime. And when we have a city councilwoman who will not listen to what her constituents need, what we need, I mean, even the homeowners have written a letter to her disapproving of her no vote for supporting the police. And by the way, she voted against making it a felony if you were in possession of a catalytic converter that wasn't yours. She voted against that. It's insane. I do not understand how you can be in office and you can have your constituents like us working with you, talking to you, trying to communicate to you to get you to do what we want to do. We're the majority. Frank, we pay the taxes. The small businesses pay massive taxes, and so do the homeowners, quite frankly. So we need to vote her out. Basically, she needs to be out. And anybody that votes along those lines, they have to be out. We have to vote them out because they are not understanding that it is a battleground out there. I mean, think of those robberies. Just imagine if an employee, happened to be there when they did it. What would have happened? It's the most insane. It's why we're a laughing joke across the country. It's already hard enough for small businesses. And Home State is a wonderful restaurant. I've been there. I was so happy that they came to the area of Sherman Oaks 7 times. 7 times. And do you think Nithya Raman's reached out to them? Do you think she's like saying, hey, how would you want me to vote on this because you're being affected by this? No, she's not. She basically votes exactly the way she wants to vote. That's it. She doesn't care about how we feel about it. No matter how much we begged her, and believe me, before she voted, there were several business owners who directly communicated with her office, do not vote no on this. We need help. We need safety. We need security. LAPD is so short, they can't keep up. We need more officers. We need to entice them. We need to give them reasons to come here because who wants to be a cop in LA? Quite frankly, it's not the best job in the whole world, right? I mean, we're drowning here, and I'm happy. I'm very happy that I was told anyway that the Encino's homeowners group, Encino Property Owners Association, wrote a scathing letter to her, disavowing and telling them how upset they were that she voted no on those two things. And I encourage every single person that's listening that's in CD4 to literally go and look up her number. Let me give it to you, 213-473-7004. 213-473-7004. If you can't vote them out, shout them out. And that's what we're telling everybody on SOS Los Angeles. You get their email, you get their phone number. Every time you see somebody shoplifting, every time you see a homeless person using open drug air.
Angela, thank you very much for telling it like it is and trying to explain this nonsense out there. You did a great job again, and we'll be listening for you tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock, picking up where you just left off here. That is Angela Marsden, the owner of the Pineapple Hill Saloon and Grill in Sherman Oaks and host of SOS Los Angeles, which airs Saturdays right here at 1 p.m. on 790 KBC. This is Mottek on Money on 790 KBC.
Mix a little sports analysis, pop culture, and great interviews, and you've got the Rich Eisen Show podcast.
Mike Florio, who's coaching for their gigs this year, do you think?
Brandon Staley, the Chargers, has to be. The way that they ended the 2022 season. And I think Robert Kraft put everyone on notice, including Bill Belichick, that it could be over. And Rich, every owner is thinking about the easy part is getting rid of the guy I have. The hard part is finding a guy who's as good or better.
The Rich Eisen Show podcast, wherever you listen.